Hello. I've come to the church today because I have a message to share with the church. To the three generations of the grandfather, the sons, and the grandsons. These are the three generations that have made a bridge throughout all generations. This message might be a little more than an epistle, so you might want to go back and hear it again or pause it and re-listen to some parts. It's been quite a few weeks since I've been able to address the church. And I want to address the church not only here, but in the rest of the world. This year and the results of this year will define the world for a generation at least. The world, the alliances of nations, the leadership status of nations, democracy, capitalism, socialism, dictatorship, families, professions, jobs, science, health, truth, information, news, internet, everything will be affected and realigned and redefined. Just as God used the famine to bring Abraham into Egypt and Jacob and his sons into Egypt, God has used this pandemic to do His will and bring forth change for His church and for His people, both present and future people of God. This pandemic has clearly marked the turning point between the old and the new, just like many times in history, like World War II, marked the end of an era and the beginning of another. Also 9/11. Change has happened, and we're in the midst of the beginning of the new, and we will slowly discover the elements of what the new includes. This new paradigm will contain some elements of the past, many unknown elements that will be part of the future. And we still don't know what things we will lose or what things we will gain, whether we lose nice things or things that we don't consider so nice. Whether we gain bad things or good things, we must wait to discover the day that the Lord has prepared for us. For this is the day that the Lord has made. And in the midst of this change, there's a message you have to hear because it will affect your future. And today, I'm at the church because I want to speak to the church, the present church in the world today, and the future church that is and will be born at this time. But to the new generation and the new church that's being born, you also need to hear this message because this applies to you also. Now, I want to begin by speaking about my generation. As I begin to see my friends growing older, some of them a little forgetful, as sometimes me also, we are obviously showing our age. And as we grow weaker, we might not care about what's happening and what will happen in the future. Some may have already excluded themselves as not even relevant at this time. Maybe we're just struggling with your big problems, whether it be financial or health. Many of you are probably disillusioned, discouraged, just staying in the background, trying to exist till the end. Leaving the battle to others, staying in the back ranks because you no longer consider yourself a valid soldier to be in the forefront of the battle. But let me tell you something. It's not over until your last breath. You must keep increasing your spiritual wealth, an inheritance that you leave to your posterity until that last breath. So do not give up. You are relevant. Then there's another generation. The next generation that I call intermediate. The generation that we fathered. They're not the new generation, the millennials, the young people. They are the intermediate generation. They have, if God wills it, quite a bit of life left, strength and dreams yet to fulfill. And they have lived under our influence and accepted our teachings and knowledge of God. And many have experienced their own. And they have imitated to their best ability our testimony, our lives, and that which is good. But maybe you have, even without meaning to, been influenced by our strictness or our immutable principles, that you have seen our lives that was a part of what God required to us in the past. And you have seen God's blessing on our lives for living that way. And you have said, this is the way it is, and it has to be. And you try to make yourself a picture to not only imitate us, but to tweak that picture, do a little Photoshop, and change the things that I'm sure that you don't like in us, and say, I will not be that way. So go ahead, do a Photoshop. Blur out our errors and replace them with what you have learned. But therein lays the problem. Everything we've taught you, we have passed from the generation of our fathers, whom we also imitated and photoshopped and changed quite a few things, and had our own experiences that made us who we are, how we think, even our attitudes. So we've been there where you are now. But again, therein lies the problem. Maybe you've inherited that picture as a goal, as something that's fixed and should not be changed and must be defended at all cost. But unwittingly, you are excluding yourself from that change that we had to accept when the new generation came to us for shelter 50 years ago. Change was difficult for us at that time, and it will be for you also. But you must accept change. Be flexible to change. Don't let what you know exclude you from what you don't know. What you've even been through, it might have been lovely and wonderful to be cherished. But don't let it exclude you from the future that God has for you, that you have not yet known because it's not revealed. Your life is not over. It's far from over. It will be as it always has been throughout generations. The generations will overlap each other. They will overlap the new generation. You are the older brother, and you will have to live with the younger siblings. There are many things I don't like, and I'm sure there's many more I won't like. But you don't have to like something to accept it. Just like many things God has given us to pass through that we didn't like, we still don't. The things we had to go through, like problems and sufferings and situations and trials of our faith, but we accepted them all because our love for God's tender mercies and the hands that have given us those situations are the nail-pierced hands of the cross. And when those difficult situations started, we were all like you in a panic mode because it's changed our normal. But eventually, we learned to live with that new normal or with that problem. We didn't like it, but we learned to accept it because it was God's new normal. I remember many years ago in 1995, when God began to play some songs of a Mexican songwriter called Marcos Witt. And those songs were being used by the Spirit of God, but I couldn't stand them. The young people loved them, but I didn't want to sing those songs. But God made me realize that that was a key He was using for the next generation of young peoples. So I swallowed my likes and began to sing those songs as if they were the most beautiful ones in the songs. And the kids said, "Oh, look how God has changed my pastor. He's getting cool now and he likes these songs that we like." And I didn't. But I saw something. The Holy Spirit began working through those songs, and He captured that generation of young people. And they came to the seminary and they became pillars in the church. And as life has showed us, The fear of the problem is many times greater than the problem itself that you imagine. Like the foregoing problem and fear of going to the dentist or the doctors when you have a pain you can't identify. And then we find out it was no big problem. It was just an indigestion or some gases. They say, and we have experienced, that the epidemic of fear can be much greater than the actual epidemic of illness. In history, there has been many instances of people who are convinced that they're about to get into the final apocalypse because of things that are happening in the world, the tsunamis, the earthquakes, the wars, all this and that. And they were so sure the world was ending that some even took their lives and their children's lives. But they were wrong. It was just their fears. And like Winston Churchill said, we have nothing to fear but fear itself. Jesus said, fear not. Don't let fear or panic cause you to look at what God is doing and say, that's not good. It doesn't matter whether we think something is good or not good. If I would have had been present in the creation and seen the creation of flies and spiders and mosquitoes and snakes and weeds, I certainly would not have said, that's good. Why would you do something? Why would you create such a thing? And yet, when God finished the creation, He said, it is good. So we have to learn to accept even though we don't understand. And many of us have learned to accept the things that God creates in our lives. And in faith and in trust and in love of the Father, we can say, it is good. And as the song says, we can sing, it is well with my soul, because you have taught me to say, it is well with my soul. And when the situations and problems and illnesses or sickness come to an end, and we see the good that God had in it, we said, certainly, God, it was good. We have not liked those situations, but we have accepted them. And even though in the beginning we might have complained and certainly not understood, but eventually we accepted it and said, if God has given me this, then it is good. And that is the sign of maturity in the church. We have had a wonderful inheritance given to us. Like it says in Psalm 16:6, the lines are fallen unto me in pleasant places. Yea, I have a good inheritance. And in Deuteronomy 21:17, talking about inheritance, it says the firstborn of his father is entitled to receive a double portion of his father's inheritance. All the other sons received only one portion, but the elder received twice. In Jesus' now well-known and famous parable of the prodigal son, you know that there's another lesser known title for that, and it's called the parable of the two sons. You know the story. In Luke 15, it says the father said to his servants, bring the best robe and put it on him when his son came back, and make a feast, kill the calf. My son was dead and now he's alive. And then we read about his elder son. He's in the field. He heard the singing, the music, and he got angry at what was happening. But you know, there's something that we must understand. For the prodigal son, all was well until the famine came. That's what changed it all. And that's what's happening now in the world. This happening that God is doing is making the story to change for the prodigals. And for us too. And he also included in this parable the story of the attitude of the elder brother that we often do not think of when we hear the story of the prodigal son. He was addressing, by giving this parable, he was addressing the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the priests and their religious holier-than-thou people that went every day to the temple to pray and were special and spiritual. Yet all of these self-righteous elders rejected their own family, the publicans, the sinners, the tax gatherers like Matthew, even the harlots that he came to save. He ministered to, calling them back to the Father's house. But they rejected those unreligious followers of Jesus, the lost. But they were their family. They were Jews. Jesus said plainly in Luke 19:10, "For the Son of Man is come to seek and to save that which was lost." That was why he came. And he found me. God is calling to the lost to come. At the same time dealing to soften the heart that has hardened of the elder brother. The heart that's become inflexible, even complacent with time. The self-righteous generation of elder brothers. And sometimes his dealings in allowing us to go through very difficult circumstances like many are going through in this moment in life, until those other things don't even seem to matter anymore. And we gain through the trouble a new perspective of life, and the squabbles of doctrines and forms or Christian correctness or religious etiquette seem to disappear in the trenches of war. The difference of doctrines, when persecution came, disappeared, and they all united as brethren in history. Now why? The elders' anger and rejection of the lost brother. Maybe the eldest son thought that the father would take away some of his inheritance to give it to the younger brother, and that the younger brother, had wasted his inheritance, and now he doesn't have any, and he was going to lose part of his. No, 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 no. God won't take away what He's given to you. Neither will He treat you different nor abandon you because He has a future generation to tend to. You will always be special to Him. You will not lose your place. But He will add to His and your family because He has so much inheritance that you don't know of to give out. He might even give you a bit to share of their inheritance, to taste of in the few years that you have left on this earth. Many elder brethren, even in their faithfulness and loyalty to work for the Father, have unwittingly become hardened inside in the relationship and lost their first love. And this was evidenced when the Father said, "Son, you're ever with me. All I have is yours. You could feast whenever you wanted. You should be happy." And sometimes when we're sad or disappointed or even angry at God, it's hard to be flexible, to receive the new. As for me, I want to be a part of the future. I don't want to be left to be irrelevant in this new time. Lord, show me where you dwell today. I want a fresh, not a stale, old relationship of an old married couple that don't even say I love you anymore. I want something fresh like in the beginning. God will take care of you. He won't forget everything you've done in the participation that you have had in the past. As the elder son in the story of the prodigal son, he was safe from famine. In his inheritance was safe. His children were safe. His future was safe. He was in the Father's house. But the problem was his attitude towards the future. And the future involved the inclusion of the new with the old, living together in the same Father's house. The Father loved both the past generation and the future generation, the old generation and the new generation, many that are still coming down the road. Didn't He always say, "I am the God of Abraham, but also of Isaac and of Jacob"? All 3 generations are in his bosom. Some sheep that were lost have already begun arriving, and even more are on the way. Others are waking up, others are still not waking up. They're on their way to the Father's house, and he is preparing for a wonderful feast. But the feast is not just for the new generation. The older son is included. It always was and always will be. You'll never be excluded unless you want to exclude yourself. But sometimes the old generation excludes itself. As in the history of the church, the old persecuted the new. The old criticized the new because it could not understand that the feast is for you and also for them. You might say, but I'm not going to say anything. I've learned to keep silent. Not to say what I think in order to not sin or hurt others. But you might be thinking, not accepting what God is doing is good, and that everything works together for good. So I invite you to take one more step. It is good that you've kept silent. Keep your thoughts and criticisms to yourself in order to not offend God. That is good. But do something greater. Don't even allow those thoughts to arise. And if they do, don't dwell on them. Trust in God. And say, I'm not going to think about it. You're in charge. You'll take care of it. You'll take care of the people's errors, if there are any, the people's mistakes, even excesses. There always will be and have been. Just like you have taken care of mine. There's a t-shirt, you probably saw it, that says, people wear, and it says, God is not through with me yet. So just let time reveal how everything will turn out. And in the beginning, the new is kind of, mixed up and haphazard until we realize, oh yes, and now I know what's going on. This year, I was in Argentina for a conference. And after the conference, I felt to travel south to Mar del Plata to attend a small youth camp. And there God caused me to see that those very days, there in the 3rd floor of Penile, where my father started the seminary in Penile, that is when God was beginning the new thing that he was doing. Many times in the past I've encountered new beginnings, and I've had to decide whether to exclude myself because I'm too entrenched in my ways, too old or tired to start over again, or to challenge myself to learn the language, to be able to relate to the new generation of younger brothers, and not just to sit there and criticize how they talk or how they act. I had to remember how I talked and how I acted when I was young, and the attitude that the elders had towards me. Many attitudes, they hurt me deeply. Some of those hurtful attitudes I definitely did not want to keep or replicate it. And right there I decided and pleaded with God in Mar del Plata this February, please, from the depth of my heart, do not exclude me in your future plans. I want to be a part of it. I'm willing, Lord, to make a fool of myself if necessary to be included, but I don't want to be excluded. If nothing else, let me be a spectator to rejoice in the feast, even though I might be spiritually lactose intolerant or new food intolerant. Like many people, they don't like to try new foods. They say, I don't like it. They haven't even tried it yet. They refuse to eat it. I said, how do you know if you like it if you don't want to try it? Granted, there might be some foods that I might not be able to swallow or eat, but I'll eat what I can. I'll give it a try. If I told you the things I have had to try and to eat, you won't believe it. But I've done it. I've tried at least. I will taste what the Father has prepared in this feast, because it includes me also, and He has not forgotten my portion. Many times, when a mother tells her children she's pregnant with another child, there's an immediate reaction. Some say, oh, how lovely. Others get angry. Other children rejoice that there's an addition to the house population. They rejoice that there's somebody new, a little brother to have fun with, to share with, to help grow up, to protect him and teach him, and then when he grows up, to accept him as an equal, not as a stranger, not as a threat, but as a friend. And so we must decide what our place will be in the next new normal. To be like the elder in the story of the prodigal son, get mad or despise or ignore our little brother? Will we make sure to let him know that we don't agree with him, that we don't like what he does, that we don't like what he is? Maybe not tell him, but with our look or expression of the face, we'll be criticizing with a holier than thou attitude. You poor little thing. With our eyes looking down at him as a sinner, with clear despisement of what he is, what he represents, what we don't like. After all, you might not know that the father threw the best robe on the lost brother, that beautiful new coat, but he didn't wash him first. He stunk. Oh, the odor was terrible. Yes, he had a nice coat, and he had shoes placed on his dirty feet. Neither did the elder brother ask, "Oh, hi, brother, what happened? Tell me, how did you get to be this way?" When we hear the word prodigal, immediately we think of a sinner. But that's not what prodigal means. Prodigal means prodigious, a prodigious giver, a big spender, a giver to others. Yes, he made a big mistake. He gave away to his friends as if there were no tomorrow. He didn't save up anything for a rainy day or a famine that surely came, like today's famine came to the world in the form of a pandemic. Just like today's millennials, they don't think about retirement, they don't care about the future, just living today and spending everything. I guess this coronavirus pandemic will be a wake-up call to them, right? He just used up all his money by giving it away to his friends and trying to find happiness and mirth, as Solomon did, until he realized it was all vanity and a worthless pursuit, because happiness doesn't come this way. And yes, he was a terrible business investor, naive and ignorant of life, and wasted his money. And when the famine came, he had nothing left. Friends will leave you. Mirth will disappear. And as we look at little brother, we think and know he has so much to learn that he doesn't know. And there's a tendency to say, "Oh, you'll see, things aren't that way in life, kid." I remember one woman in a church, that when we opened a church in Spain, she would greet the new people when they were coming out so happy and say, "You just wait. The trials are going to come. You think life is rosy, but just wait. You're going to get sad." What a way to tell. Just let them find out. God will give them the strength and the joy in the midst of their trials. Many times we want to say, "Hey kid, it's not the way you think it is. You're going to have to go through the school of hard knocks as I have." Or maybe not. Maybe God will give him a pass from the hard knocks that we have received. We didn't have to go through the previous generation's hard knocks. They had to go through World War II. We haven't. World War I. We didn't. We didn't have to go through the Spanish flu that killed millions in 1918. We didn't have to go through the persecutions of the church in China, or go through the torture of Christians in the Colosseum of Rome. We didn't have to live hiding in the catacombs under the 7 hills of Rome. So why would I want to impose what I had to go through? The spiritual experiences, the cross that I had to experience, the learning process I had to experience. Maybe we also have something new to learn. Maybe God will reveal secrets that we never thought existed, and we will show it to a new generation, and we can be part of something wonderful. And our last days need not be spent in bitterness, nor thinking that God has abandoned us. Let us not be afraid of receiving a new little brother. Yes, a dirty brother, one that doesn't even think or act or look like we do, doesn't like what we do, doesn't share what we do. And yes, the prodigal son will also have to correct his attitude towards the older generation. But don't worry, he's young yet. He doesn't even know he's wrong yet. Let God show him. Give him time for God to bring them around. Don't worry. The Father will work that out too. He always does, like He has with us. But not now, maybe. He's not going to ruin the feast by scolding him so soon and ruin the wonderful welcome just to make you feel good or justified before your little brother. To hear them tell the prodigal son, "You have so far to go, little prodigal son. You don't know how bad you are. Look at the elders. Be like them, act like them." He can't be like them. He barely knows how to speak except oink, oink. Remember, he was living with pigs, eating pig foods. Why should we try to impose upon him our table etiquette and the correct use of napkins and forks? We just need to have patience, even long patience and long suffering like God has had for us. Let us have amazing grace, the same that God had for us. Remember the hymn? I once was lost, I once was blind. Let us remember His tender mercies as He made us understand and realize that we were lost and to see that we were blind. Pardon the pun. Let us go back. Rewind your life to when you were a prodigal son and regain that attitude so you can relate with the future generation. So what do we do with the past? Just throw it out? No. The old generation, all we have is memories, our wonderful memories. But we must not forget them, because our memories are the hope, the faith, the picture of what little brother will be one day. And those memories will make you look at little brother with eyes of hope, with eyes of faith. And yes, it might take a lot of faith when you look at him, but don't see what he is. Don't look when those diapers are being changed today. Try to see what little brother will be one day when God is through. And if you are the father of the mother or the mother of a prodigal son, I'm sure you won't have this problem. You'll understand why the father gladly embraced him back into the fold. But what about those that are not your sons? Will you receive them with the same joy as you would if they were your children that returned? Almost everywhere in the world I go, I hear the heart-wrenching stories of parents whose hearts have been broken by their children's wandering. Yes, beautiful, wonderful Christians, workers, pastors even, that have suffered these trials and tribulations and testings of God. Some of these prodigals have returned, others not yet. But I wonder if God has not allowed this in order to teach the older generation about mercy. Mercy on a sinful world, mercy on the lost, mercy on the prodigal son and those that are seemingly dead. God is going to breathe upon those dead and the dry bones, and it's going to make them come back to life. Are you ready to embrace and hug the dry bones of a lost generation as if they were your children? Instead of the elder brother of the prodigal son in Jesus' parable, maybe you can be like the older brother of Jacob in Genesis 33. Esau ran and hugged his long-lost younger brother. And finally, a word for the new generation. Don't forget, you're arriving to the elder's house. Do not despise those that came before you, and work the fields that you will not now enjoy. that built the houses in which you will now dwell, that have the finances that you'll need to be blessed with. So never despise those that came before. You one day will be like us. Honor your father and your mother, that you might live long and prosper. Some of you might recognize this, live long and prosper. In the Star Trek series, it was a Vulcan salute taken from the priestly blessing. Have you ever wondered where Spock got the idea for his famous Vulcan salute, accompanied by the phrase, live long and prosper? It's from the Bible. Here's a story. When the actor Nimoy that played Spock was a little boy, his father took him to a Jewish synagogue. And the young Leonard was much impressed by the moment when the Kohanim, which are the priestly descendants of Aaron, pronounced that benediction. The Lord bless you and keep you, make his face shine upon you, be gracious upon you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. This blessing, Leonard reported, was neither spoken nor sung, but delivered in a chant so raucously hair-raising that he never forgot the experience. Though his father had told him to bow his head, close your eyes, do not look, the boy couldn't help peeking. And what he saw was the Kohanim with their hands raised over the congregation and their fingers spread in a most peculiar fashion. And as for the phrase, live long and prosper, it's a short form of Deuteronomy 5:33, when God says, walk in obedience to all that the Lord your God has commanded you, so that you may live and prosper and prolong your days in the land that you will possess. To this day, when that Aaron's benediction is pronounced in a Jewish synagogue, both the chanters and the congregation cover their faces because of the Shekinah glory of God is believed to shine out from between the spread fingers of the Kohanim. This gesture itself of the hand imitates the Hebrew letter Shin, which is the first letter of the Hebrew Shekinah, and also the first letter of Shalom, which is peace. And most importantly, is the first letter of the most holy name, Shaddai. Among the Jews, this name is forbidden to be spoken aloud, except on one occasion, during the benediction of Aaron, when they speak it out 3 times and hear it from the mouth of the Kohanim priest. Thus, in the words of Numbers 6:27, so shall they put my name upon the people of Israel, and I will bless them. So I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to bless you. Don't peek. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. And may you live long and prosper. Amen.
You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, filling every heart. I worship you. Even though I don't feel it, you are working. You never stop working. You never stop working.